Hey, welcome back to Dev Radio. As always, I got Matt Calder with me. Hey,
Hey,
Matt, how
man.
you doing?
Doing good.
And we got our illustrious guest, Samir Doshi. Samir, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How about you?
We're doing great as always, Samir. You have brought great content to us about fire. We're glad to have you back. We've been hearing some really cool things about Smart on Fire, and we want to bring our expert on it. So, Samir, instead of trying to figure this out on our own, we want to ask you, what is Smart on Fire? How can we understand it? Do you have some technical demos? Can you help break it down for us and our audience in a way that we can understand? We're excited to see what you can show us today, so that our audience and that people can get hands on with, what's changing in this space.
Absolutely. So FHIR is the Fast Health Interoperability Resources Standard that all electronic medical record systems (EMRs) and electronic health record systems (EHRs) are required to follow in the U.S. And as with any standard, as soon as you introduce a standard, it opens up the floodgates of innovation for potential tech companies. Smart on Fire is the next level of that standard that enables you or I or anyone else to do something that we've never been able to do before. And that's write health apps that interface directly with different medical providers, EMRs, and EHRs. So if we take a step back and go back to the world before FHIR and before Smart on Fire, let's say that you had a great idea and you were thinking, you know what? Every time I go to my doctor's office, they always have a problem with this particular thing. I'm changing prescriptions. And you've seen a complex series of drop downs, and you've thought, Matt, I'm really good at rendering drop downs, and I bet I could render a drop down that's super easy to fill out and would really, really help my physician out. But we're operating in the days before FHIR and Smart on Fire. So for you to take that app to market, you would have to write an app that is geared towards one very specific EMR or EHR. You then have to go and have that app installed at every single provider location. And then, of course, with that goes maintenance, updates. You'd have to hope that provider doesn't update their EMR in such a way that it breaks your app. And it would be a nightmare. And
very expensive.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It barely ever got done. Yeah. But we've now got Smart, and we've got FHIR and Smart on Fire. So with these standards, what you can do is what you'd expect from a traditional new SaaS cloud app. And with that, you can basically write an app yourself, write it once, maintain it as a software as a service application hosted in the cloud, one location where you maintain the version, you maintain the code, but using the Smart on Fire standard, you can securely have access to specific sets of data from that EHR or EMR. And in the end, what it means is that your pharmacy drop-down app, you can write it, you can have various hospitals very, very simply integrate to that app. And then ultimately, and the most important part is, your doctor can just click a link right from their EMR system that they always use, launch your app securely gets the data, and everything just works. Sounds pretty good, right?
Yeah. Great explanation.
Yeah, so like for if members of the audience are like me and need to explain, like I'm 5 version for the FHIR is the standard for the API, and Smart might be the standard for how the app is hosted, right? And so with those together, we have a standard for how we host the APIs and a standard for how we host the app, making it so that we could just build stuff universally, right?
Exactly, and it's a new standard, so it's a very open marketplace where we don't have it's an emerging opportunity for people, so that there aren't a lot of players already in the marketplace. So it's a great time to kind of get started with Smart on Fire.
Perfect. Yeah.
And with that, what we've done, and what I'm going to show you today is a starter kit. So got an explanation of what Smart on Fire standard is. Hopefully, Matt and Sydney, you're jazzed and you want to work on this.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Show out.
The thing I don't want you to have to do is now go do a absolute ton of research. What we want you to do is we want you to think agile. We want you to get started right now. And for us, it means start with a starter kit. So we've produced a starter kit, github.com/Microsoft Smart on Fire App Starter Kit. And it's right here. It's got everything you need. It has the instructions on how to get started, and we'll actually walk through it. It also has a GIF version of the demo, which is pretty nice. But let's go ahead and walk through it. So let's clone the code. And we'll get that cloned and we'll get it pulled down, and then we'll talk through what it's going to do while we're installing things. All right, so I will go ahead and clone it, and I'll get the dependency installs going in the background. So this is a React app starter kit, and a lot of the Smart on Fire apps that you're going to see are going to end up being React apps. So if you're a JavaScript dev, this is going to be super simple. But I do want to stress that it is a cloud-based system, so you can have a front end that is React-based, but you can do whatever you want in the back end.
Yeah, just for everyone's information, we're going to make sure the links for this starter kit are in the description box on this video. And this is pretty language agnostic. As long as you can receive a HTTP request, you're fine as far as whatever language you want to use.
Exactly. So let's go ahead and we cloned it. We went into the directory. We're going to do our yarn install. And that's going to run in the background and install all of our dependencies. We'll let that run. But while that's running, I want to point out to you that, I did say you don't have to read up on it. But as you get closer and closer to production, you definitely should read up on it. And if you're interested, there's a lot of useful links, like this link from Smarter Health, which maintains the standards and talks through all of the standards. It's got everything you'd possibly want on here, including how you can access data, how the data flow works. And I know I kind of touched on that, but if we look at that, how the data flow works, they actually have a pretty good diagram on there for us. Now, over here on our left is our electronic health record system. And what I said was that, our doctor kicks off our app using a link right in the EHR in the context of their session. So they're logged into the EHR as they normally would. Sydney, I like to think I'm sitting there on the table watching them work, typing. They click on the link to our app, and some magic happens. And this is the beauty of standards, the beauty of APIs. What will happen is that, in our case, a browser-based app will launch to our URL. You will use this very, very specific standard. So our URL, and then a link ID. More information on that in the starter kit or in the documentation. Our app then reads that link ID, decodes it, makes a request to that EHR's, the Electronic Health Records FHIR interface, then makes a request to the security authorization server for that EHR. So again, this is all stuff that your hospital IT group has already set up. From there, that EHR authorization service makes sure that the hospital provider system is okay with our app accessing that very specific piece of data. So in our case, maybe it's a patient record. And if that is the case, make sure that the doctor who initially kicked off the request has access. Once both those conditions are met, it will create it'll transmit the data to our cloud-based app. But the real magic is our app also has a limited time-based access to write back to that data. So not only do we have access to read the patient data, we can also write back to it. So in the case that we were talking about the pharmacy dropdown selector, you could actually have that, render Sydney's fancy dropdown in our app, have that pop up, have the doctor seamlessly use our app without even really knowing it. But in the end, we've been able to solve this really, really complex problem, and we've been able to do it in a cloud-based way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of it. We build our own app that interacts with medical data, and because FHIR is a standard, it doesn't matter what vendor they're using. It doesn't matter which off-the-shelf solution they're using, as long as it implements the FHIR standard, which is a standard that's enforced. Our application is going to work.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful, right? It just all works in the back, almost like magic. So let's look at our app. It's probably done with its install. You can see it's installed all of its dependencies.
30 seconds.
Let's go ahead and look at the code, and then we'll launch it and see what it looks like. I missed hitting the enter there. Okay, here we are. Okay, so this is like I said, a pretty standard React app. We've got a source folder. And inside the source, we've only got two components here. There's an index, which does have some modifications, which we'll talk through in a second. But basically, the modifications just implement a FHIR library that on load of the app will go and initiate all of that complex OAuth authorization that we were talking about earlier. And we'll go and fetch the patient as what's called a React provider. And not super important to know, but it just means that the patient is accessible to all other components of the app. Our actual component that we've made, and this is a starter kit, so we're really hoping you can modify it as much as you want. The other component is the app component. In our app component, we're only doing a very simple thing that's rendering the patient. So I'll go down to the render method. We are using an open source rendering method to render the patient. It's from the. Sorry, go ahead, Sydney.
I was going to say, again, FHIR is a standard, so you could just pull in libraries that people have already built around a FHIR standard to do some common things, because it's open source standard. So you don't have to build a lot of this stuff. It's already out there.
Exactly. And look at this. We've got our patient visualizer where we're just piping in the patient, and that's it.
Our component's already out there. It's amazing.
And then we also, for the purposes of our starter kit, included we didn't want to just include hey, here's how you read and render the data. We wanted to include a sample of how to write back to the data. So we're putting in a form here, and that form just has two components, a first name and a last name. So basically, we're going to let you edit that patient. But the code is one thing. Let's go see it in action. Okay, so we need to yarn start, and that will go, and it's going to do the typical React thing of like open up a window to localhost 3000. But interestingly enough, that's not going to work, because if you recall when I was showing you the sequence diagram, you have to pipe in data in that very special URL format.
Mm-hmm.
So what this typically means is that you need to have an EHR or something that can talk FHIR. Luckily, the Smarter Health IT organization has made available launch.smarterhealthit.org, and this can help you simulate an EMR. So let's go ahead and go over to here, and you can see this is actually a really simple site to use. I'm just going to leave all of these things the same. Basically, I'm saying I want to load it in the context of a patient, a provider. And down here is, hey, which patients do you want to add? So let's click in the drop down, and we'll select one. So
amazing. You could just have fictional patients.
Exactly. Yeah. There are little utilities you can get called Cynthia, where you can actually create thousands and thousands of fictional patients who have, fictional lives and all kinds of stuff. Okay, we're going to select this one. Just keep scrolling down. And I've already been in this form once before, but basically you type in here what the URL is. So for us, it's localhost 3000. Okay, so then we just click the magic launch button, and that is going to, so we're pretending we're in our simulated EHR. This is the patient we were in, we have Miss Cassandra sitting on our exam table, and we as Dr. Alberto Orn are logging in. Oh, with a pretty weak password, but we'll log in.
We're logging into your app you just built.
Exactly. So now this is our app, and you can see what would happen on a smart app. It's our app running in the context of our simulated EHR. It's got our app. Here's the patient visualizer. Here's the form in here, and we'll just go ahead and update that. We're going to change Cassandra to Carrie. And we'll hit update. And of course, like it'll update here, and that's kind of cool that we've been able to make that updated request. But I do want to show you, like, this is a simulated EHR. So if we were to go back to that EHR, and now let's go look at the patients that are here. What we should see is her name should be changed to Carrie, and it is, just like we would expect. So our smart app made that call to go get the patient information. We modified it using our app, which we can make whatever we want, however complex. We can use whatever libraries we want, and then write that data right back to that EHR. And the coolest thing is that that was all done with the context of that simulated doctor that we were being, and for that simulated amount of time. So now, if you want to write a healthcare app, you just write a cloud-based app, make sure it conforms to the SMART standard, and you can basically integrate with any EMR or any EHR in the United States.
Very cool. Very cool. It's again, very low friction to get started and build your own application and make sure you conform to the standard, and very low friction to get something that could be in the marketplace.
Exactly. And because we're in our React kind of dev space, we can do what we would normally do in React and say, go ahead and change that. I'll just hit save. We'll go back, we'll select. We'll go back here. We'll launch our,
It looks like it's already changed.
It's already changed. Here I am thinking, but it's already changed. So if we are in our dev space and you're like me and you're thinking, oh, I really want to get started on this, it's as simple as that. Pull down the starter kit, go to launch.smarter health, start coding away, and then get your app out there into our virtual world and start making life better for doctors, nurses, and other people who are regularly using EHRs.
Well, Samir, this is really impressive. Thank you so much for showing us this today.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what people out there are going to start developing.
Well, we're going to make sure we have hyperlinks to the starter kit and to that site where you can go and test this out for all the people who want to try this out. And I'm sure we're going to have tons of questions. So we're definitely going to point people to the documentation so they can give this a shot themselves.
Awesome.
Well, Matt, Samir, again, this is great. And everyone, make sure if you got questions, throw them in the comments. Hopefully we'll come back and talk about this again someday. I don't expect this to do anything but explode in popularity. I've done apps in the healthcare space before. It's never been this frictionless. for everybody else out there who's watching this, we hope to see you again on Dev Radio. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you subscribe. We'll definitely do some cool videos like this again in the future. All right, we'll see you all again later.